What are the risks to buying a co-op? We'll discuss this topic in the following video. My name is Chris at Houseit. Houseit is the largest for sale by owner and buyer commission rebate company in New York City, established 2014. The first major risk to buying a co-op in New York City is the risk of having a corrupt or inept co-op board. For example, you're in serious trouble if you buy into a building where the co-op board is utterly corrupt and one or more officers or board members are taking kickbacks or illegal referrals from contractors for large jobs in the building. For example, the typical referral fee can be 25% or more for a job, often given in cash. Now, if a co-op board member is receiving a kickback, he or she may not bother to solicit competitive quotes or even multiple quotes, and as a result, the contractor who gets the job as a result of the kickback may be marking up the job significantly. For example, in New York City, and especially in Manhattan, it's not uncommon to see jobs with a six-figure price tag, such as $100,000 to repair part of a roof. If that is the quote given and the board members do not bother to solicit additional quotes because perhaps of a secret arrangement, well, the board member may pocket $25,000 to him or herself and the rest of the shareholders pay up. Another risk is that the board members are simply incompetent or totally inept for the job. For example, some board members may retain power, but they don't speak business English. They may have a simple grasp of English, but they simply do not understand anything related to real estate and thus are effectively unable to govern or even respond properly to emails. Lastly, a less insidious but just as deadly risk is buying into a building where the co-op board is simply lazy. We get it. Everyone is busy in New York, but this is a typical tragedy of the commons in economic terms that we often see in New York City, where board members all slack off in the hopes that one other board member or someone else on the board would take over and spend more free time governing the building. Another major risk to buying a co-op is having poor building management, essentially a managing agent that is corrupt, inept, or simply lazy. In this example, just like co-op boards, a managing agent can be utterly corrupt and accept kickbacks or referrals illegally, perhaps in cash, from contractors. This means perhaps due to the fact that the managing agent is accepting an illegal kickback, or perhaps simply because the managing agent is lazy, the managing agent may not bother to solicit multiple quotes or competitive quotes. The managing agent may simply choose to reach out to the 1, 2, or 3 contractors that he or she already knows quite well just to get an uncompetitive quote from a couple of places and to present it to the board. In another vein, a managing agent can simply not respond to you even if you are on the board. In this infuriating instance, the managing agent may only respond to one particular officer, such as the quote-unquote president of the board, which for some bizarre reason the managing agent may feel has authority, and even though you are on the board, you effectively don't have any power because the managing agent refuses to respond to any calls or emails from you. Another less insidious but equally dangerous risk to having a poorly managed building is a managing agent that is simply not on top of it and that is lazy or inept and doesn't respond to letters or fines or notifications from various city agencies in a timely manner. In this case, letters may go unnoticed and fines can rack up quickly with lots of penalties for lateness and delays. Another real risk to buying a co-op in New York City is the prospect of having neighbors who are utterly crazy. Now, this can range from neighbors who power trip, quote unquote, and believe they have all the power in the world because they are on the co-op board. In a sense, they do have a tremendous amount of power over shareholders and their day-to-day life. But you can also face crazy neighbors who have power by virtue of being on the co-op board, who simply are petty. Perhaps you didn't say hi to them properly or with enough enthusiasm in the elevator, or perhaps you held a party 4 years ago and dared have it be larger than they expected, or you did something else inconvenient to a board member, well, this person may actually hold a grudge against you for years and may find an excuse to penalize you for the slightest infraction of the co-op house rules. Another major risk to consider in buying a co-op in New York City is the prospect of the building being poorly managed from a fiscal perspective. For example, if the co-op board and/or managing agent doesn't bother shopping for multiple and competitive quotes, especially for large, expensive projects, and if the co-op board doesn't bother to push back on annual rate increases from various vendors or price check quotes themselves, well, you might see constant increases in monthly maintenance fees much higher than the rate of inflation. And furthermore, you may even see some large, unexpected, often six-figure special assessment bills. This brings us to our next topic, unexpected special assessments. This is a significant risk to buying a co-op in New York City or anywhere. For example, did your building recently fail a Local Law 11 inspection? And is your building landmarked, and will you immediately require facade repairs? If so, the cost of major facade repairs can run into the hundreds of thousands or even millions in New York City. Divided amongst however many shareholders are in your building, this can represent a significant and unexpected one-time bill to you. Another significant risk to buying a co-op is the inability to sublet your apartment when you need to move to another apartment, perhaps because you need to have a bigger apartment because your family size is changing, for example. Keep in mind that the sublet policy that was in place when you purchased the apartment may change due to what the board decides the following year. So you may have purchased an apartment where you thought that you could sublet the apartment 2 out of every 5 years, but it turns out the following year the board decides to restrict subletting altogether. Keep in mind that co-op apartments are primarily designed for primary residency. As a result, there are usually some form of restrictions on subletting, i.e. renting out your apartment, whether it be only 2 out of every 5 years, only 2 years total, some combination of such, or no subletting whatsoever, or even in a very rare case, unlimited subletting from day one. Last major risk we'll discuss to buying a co-op in New York City is the inability to sell your apartment due to board rejection when you desperately need to sell. Perhaps you have already moved to another state, you've already purchased another home, and now you have an empty apartment which you desperately need to sell, and perhaps which you can't sublet anymore. In this case, it can be extremely infuriating and exasperating to be unable to sell because the co-op board rejects your prospective buyers over and over again. Remember that co-op boards have the right of approval and are able to reject a prospective purchaser for any reason whatsoever, technically, as long as the reason is not discriminatory in nature. Keep in mind, in practicality, there is never any way to prove that a rejection was discriminatory in nature because co-op boards are not required to reveal the reason for rejection, and for liability reasons, they never do reveal the reason for rejection. As you can imagine, if you have a petty member on the board who hates you for some reason, for something you did years ago, and now you need to desperately sell, well, you may be completely out of luck if that board member is able to influence a vote that declines your purchaser over and over again, simply to teach you a lesson. These are just some of the risks to buying a co-op that you should consider. Please consult your lawyer and feel free to check out our general resources on our website, www.houseit.com. If you want to learn more about how to save money when you buy or sell property in New York and how to save money on closing costs and broker commissions, check us out, www.houseit.com, or send us an email to team@houseit.com. The spelling is below. My name is Chris at Houseit, and we hope to see you on the next one.